You know you're in for a wild ride when someone marches up to you at a community pool like they just annexed the entire zip code and you're trespassing on sovereign territory. She had her phone halfway to her ear before I even finished laying out my towel. "You're trespassing," she barked, loud enough that even the sunbathers with headphones in sat up. And there it was, the opening shot in what would become the HOA skirmish of the decade. What she didn't know, standing there with her tennis outfit so starched it could slice bread, was that I wasn't just some lost tourist looking for free chlorine. I had legal rights, signed documents, and a landlord who quite literally helped build this place from the ground up. But hey, when you're a Karen, facts are just inconvenient speed bumps on your road to self-righteousness. I didn't even have time to explain before she was jabbing 911 into her phone like she was defusing a bomb. "Yes, this is Sienna Wren, president of the Sunny Creek HOA," she said, puffing her chest like she was calling in air support. "We have a trespasser at the pool. That's right, an emergency, a towel, a lounge chair, and a man minding his own business. 911 Withley. If you've ever seen a Karen crash and burn in real time, buckle up. Because this story wins trophies." Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from. And if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. I gathered my things and walked home under the judgmental stares of people who, 5 minutes earlier, were comparing tan lines. And as I walked, feeling equal parts embarrassed and furious, a little voice in the back of my mind whispered something important. This isn't just about a pool. I didn't know it yet, but one ridiculous phone call was about to unravel a 10-year-old secret so messy it would take police reports, lawsuits, and more drama than a Real Housewives reunion to untangle. Now, before we dive into the chaos, let me rewind a bit. My name's Canyon Thorne, 34 years old, freelance landscape architect, proud owner of too many plants and exactly zero patience for petty tyrants. I had just moved into a charming little house in Lakeview Estates, a neighboring community next to Sunny Creek, after landing a rental deal that was too good to pass up. Quiet streets, friendly-looking neighbors, and a backyard big enough to host a minor league baseball game. What could go wrong? According to my rental agreement, signed, notarized, and blessed by every legal deity in existence, I had full access to the Sunny Creek community pool. The key detail? My landlord, Rowan Hale, wasn't just some random property owner. He had helped fund the original development of Sunny Creek before Lakeview Estates split off. As part of that early investment deal, Rowan's property, and any tenant lucky enough to rent it, had permanent access to the amenities, including the pool. In fact, it wasn't just mentioned in passing, it was spelled out in bold print, complete with an original covenant agreement and signatures from the developers, recorded with the county, pretty airtight stuff. The legal equivalent of showing up to a playground fight with the Avengers as backup. And yet somehow, none of that mattered to Sienna Wren, who had been running the Sunny Creek HOA like it was her own personal dictatorship for the last 7 years. You know the type. Pastel tennis outfit? Check. Clipboard so heavy it needed its own backpack? Double check. After the pool incident, I went straight home and pulled out my rental paperwork, half expecting to find some confusing fine print that said, "Pool rights void if Karen disapproves." But there it was, plain as day. Tenants shall enjoy full access to the Sunny Creek community pool as per the standing agreement between property owner and Sunny Creek HOA dated June 15, 2013. Not a loophole, not a maybe, a covenant. The kind of legal document that laughs in the face of HOA tantrums. Still, part of me thought maybe this was just a misunderstanding, maybe Sienna was just aggressively uninformed. So the next morning I called Rowan to double check, and let me tell you, I have never heard a landlord go from zero to righteous fury so fast in my life. "Of course you have pool rights," he said, practically shouting through the speaker. "The agreement's older than half the people on the board. I helped pour the concrete for that pool. Sienna knows exactly what's in that agreement. She just doesn't like it." He paused. "And if she started harassing you, buckle up. She's been trying to erase that agreement for years." Erase it. Like it was just some line item she could white out with enough petty emails and dirty looks. Rowan, being the legend that he is, immediately emailed me copies of the original agreements. Signed, witnessed, county recorded. It was like being handed the Infinity Stones, but for real estate law. It gets better. Rowan explained that Sienna had a special hatred for my property. Apparently, previous tenants had been targeted too, blocked from using the pool, fined for imaginary violations, even ticketed by private security Sienna hired without board approval, but nobody had ever pushed back seriously. Until me. Until this moment. As Rowan put it, you're the worst thing that's happened to her rules since common sense. That night, while double-checking the documents, I met Janet Patel, my next-door neighbor, while checking the mail. Janet had the kind of sympathetic smile that told me she'd seen this show before. When I mentioned the pool incident, she just shook her head and laughed. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said. Sienna thinks she owns this entire side of town. She tried to fine me $200.00 for planting non-approved roses in my backyard, and I don't even live in Sunny Creek. That was the first time I heard the whispers, rumors, that Sienna had left her previous HOA position across town under, let's say, mysterious circumstances, financial discrepancies, missing funds, a resignation that wasn't so much voluntary as it was leave quietly or meet our lawyers. And just like that, the plot thickened faster than instant oatmeal. What started as a Karen trying to gatekeep a pool was turning into something much bigger, much nastier, and much more satisfying than I could have ever imagined. And spoiler alert, when the real story finally cracked open, it wouldn't just ruin Sienna's Saturday afternoon, it would bury her entire reign under a mountain of her own lies. But for now, I had documents, I had witnesses, and I had a front row seat to the beginning of the end. Next up, Karen's second strike. And trust me, it's a doozy. A few days later, I'm with enough paperwork to paper machine a small car. I headed back to the pool. I wasn't just bringing a towel this time. I was bringing the legal equivalent of Thor's hammer. The sun was blazing, the water was sparkling, and for a brief moment it felt like maybe, just maybe, peace had returned to Sunny Creek. No. I had barely laid my towel down when I felt the now familiar icy stare drilling a hole in the side of my head. There she was, Sienna Wren, HOA Queenpin, striding toward me with a man trailing behind her who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, including a live volcano. She stopped a few feet away, arms crossed like she was posing for a rules enforcement Barbie box cover. "I thought I made myself clear," she said, loud enough for the pigeons 2 towns over to hear. "This pool is for Sunny Creek residents only." I pulled out my stack of documents like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. "Miss Wren, I have a binding legal agreement granting access rights to this pool. It's recorded with the county, signed by you, and double laminated, in case you feel like tossing me in the deep end." She didn't even look at the papers. Didn't even pretend to consider it. She just waved a hand in my face like she was swatting at a fly. "I don't need to see your so-called documentation," she snapped. "You're not on my list, and that's all that matters." Before I could argue, she pulled out her phone like a gunslinger in an old western. "Yes, hello, this is Sienna Wren, president of Sunny Creek HOA. We have an intruder again. Repeat, intruder at the community pool. Male, uncooperative." She even looked over at me while she said it, like she was ordering pizza toppings. "Extra belligerent, please." The man standing behind her, who I would later learn was Kevin, the world's most reluctant board member, looked like he wanted to sink into the pavement. He whispered something to Sienna, but she cut him off with a sharp, "Not now, Kevin," like he was a child asking for a bathroom break. And so we waited. 15 minutes later, a police cruiser rolled up, lights off, because even they knew this wasn't exactly DEFCON 1. Out stepped Officer Asher, a man who looked like he had seen one too many HO meltdowns and really just wanted to finish his coffee. Sienna practically sprinted over to him, putting on her best concerned citizen face. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. This man is trespassing. He's a danger to the community." Asher turned to me, clearly expecting this to be a 10-second headache. "Sir, can I see some ID?" I handed him my license, and with the calmness of a man who knows he's packing an ace up each sleeve, showed him the covenant agreement. I'm not trespassing. I have legal access. Signed, sealed, and delivered by Sunny Creek itself. Officer Asher took his time reading it, flipping through the copies while Sienna hovered nearby, throwing out phrases like unauthorized use and outdated agreements like confetti. After a long moment, he handed the documents back to me and turned to Sienna. Ma'am, based on this paperwork, Mr. Thorne appears to have full legal access to the pool. This is not a criminal trespassing matter. Sienna's jaw dropped so fast it could have registered on the Richter scale. That's impossible. I'm the president of the HOA. I would know. Oh, but it gets better. She pulled Officer Asher aside, whispering furiously, clearly thinking I couldn't hear. Only she forgot that whispering for Sienna meant shouting in lowercase. I caught bits and pieces. Outsiders, neighborhood safety, past mistakes. But one sentence stood out, sharp and bright as a lightning bolt. I will not allow another failure like 10 years ago to happen on my watch. Failure? 10 years ago? My brain locked onto those words like a heat-seeking missile. What skeletons were rattling around in Sunny Creek's HOA closet? Officer Asher returned, giving me an apologetic look that screamed, "Buddy, you have no idea how tired I am of this woman." "Mr. Thorne," he said, "you're free to stay. You have every right to use this facility. Ms. Wren, I need to caution you about misusing emergency services. If you have further disputes, you should resolve them civilly, not through repeated police calls." Sienna didn't just fume, she boiled. "This isn't over," she hissed at me, like we were starring in a soap opera called The Bold and the Petty. And you know what? She was right. It wasn't over. It was only just beginning. As Sienna stalked off, Kevin lingered behind awkwardly. He sidled over to me, speaking low and fast. "I'm Kevin Vale, board member. Listen, not everyone agrees with Sienna. There's a lot of issues. She just doesn't like being questioned. Watch your back." He gave a quick nervous glance around like we were exchanging state secrets, and then practically sprinted away. That should have been the end of it. One Karen tantrum, one police intervention, case closed. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail that looked official enough to run for public office. Inside was a $500 0-cent fine from the Sunny Creek HOA for unauthorized facility use and disturbing the peace. It had a gold-embossed seal, a letterhead so fancy it probably cost more than my monthly internet bill, and a signature from Sienna so big it could be seen from space. The best part? My house wasn't even part of Sunny Creek's jurisdiction. I was as much under their authority as the moon was. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just dealing with a busybody. I was dealing with a system, a full-on HOA mafia run by a woman who treated bylaws like her personal shopping list. And if she thought she could bully me into backing down, she was about to find out that I don't fold just because someone slaps a $500 0-cent sticker price on my dignity. I called up Lyra Quinn, an old college friend turned real estate attorney, and sent her all the documents. She didn't even try to hide her laughter. "They can't fine you," she said between giggles. "They have zero legal authority over your property. This is harassment, and it's barely legal." She paused, the laughter fading into something sharper. "Actually, this smells fishy. Real fishy. You might want to start digging. People who abuse their power like this, they usually don't stop at just one pool chair." And just like that, the gloves were off. The hunt was on. And the secrets I would uncover, let's just say, calling the police over a pool chair would soon be the least of Sienna Wren's problems. The moment I hung up with Lyra, I knew exactly what I had to do. First stop, my filing cabinet. Second stop, the internet's dark corners where old HOA skeletons are buried and forgotten. Or so they think. Because if Sienna thought slapping me with a fake fine would scare me, she clearly had never dealt with a freelance landscape architect who once spent 6 weeks arguing with city zoning over the legal definition of decorative boulders. I started by reviewing my lease and Rowan's old emails, refreshing myself on every dusty clause about property rights and pool access. Everything checked out. The covenant was ironclad. The pool was as much mine as it was any Sunny Creek resident's, even if I didn't get invited to their wine and complain socials. But the real fireworks started when I went digging into public county records. You'd think an HOA president would leave a squeaky clean trail, right? Wrong. After just 20 minutes of clicking through scanned PDFs that looked like they'd been uploaded by a drunken raccoon, I found something interesting, and by interesting, I mean explosive. 7 years ago, Sienna Wren had quietly stepped down from her previous HOA gig at Oakmont Village. The official reason? Personal matters. The unofficial reason? Buried inside a 3-sentence blurb in an old local newspaper, financial irregularities discovered in HOA accounts, resulting in administrative restructuring? Translation: she got caught with her hand in the cookie jar and fled before anyone could turn off the lights. I leaned back in my chair, grinning. Sienna wasn't just a power-hungry Karen. She was a repeat offender. Sunny Creek didn't just have a bad apple. They had an apple so rotten it could clear an entire orchard. And I was about to make cider. Fueled by the sweet taste of potential justice, I dug deeper. I cross-referenced HOA boundary maps, the original development plans, and the county zoning records. It didn't take long to spot the scam. Sunny Creek's current boundary lines had somehow crept into areas they didn't own. My property, Janet's backyard, even Bill's driveway. And poor Bill wasn't even in Sunny Creek. He was basically an HOA hostage without even knowing it. Someone had been quietly redrawing the lines to expand HOA control one sneaky inch at a time. And it wasn't just about power. It was about money. Every house that got swallowed up meant more dues, more fines, more fees. It was the HOA version of Manifest Destiny. And leading the charge? Our dear president, Sienna the Conqueror. The next night, I gathered some of the neighbors, Janet, Bill, Maria, and a few others, for what basically became a suburban rebel summit in Janet's backyard. I showed them the original maps, I showed them the altered ones. I showed them how Sunny Creek's borders had mutated like a bad sci-fi monster to gobble up properties they had no right to claim. Bill stared at the maps, his face redder than a July barbecue. She had my car towed off my own property because she said it was an eyesore, he muttered. Cost me $300. Maria nodded fiercely. She fined me for having the wrong kind of mulch in my flower beds. Said it violated HOA guidelines. I live in Lakeview, not Sunny Creek. The more stories they shared, the clearer it became. Sienna wasn't running an HOA. She was running a small-time empire and treating the rest of us like peasants. And then came Kevin. Quiet, nervous Kevin, who requested we meet discreetly at a coffee shop across town, like we were plotting a coup against a dictatorship. And honestly, we kind of were. Kevin looked around nervously before sliding into the booth across from me. I can't stay long, he whispered, like the muffins had ears. I shouldn't even be talking to you. Relax, Kevin, I said. I'm not wearing a wire. He half smiled, then leaned in. Look, I'm new on the board. I thought being part of the HOA would mean, helping the community. But Sienna, she's turned it into something else. She changes the rules whenever she wants, she bullies anyone who questions her, and she's obsessed with expanding Sunny Creek's territory. She says it's about protecting property values, but I think it's about control and kickbacks. That was a new word in this disaster novel. Kevin nodded gravely. There's a real estate developer sniffing around. If Sunny Creek can claim enough land, they can sell out to him for a massive payout. Bingo. Sienna wasn't just power tripping, she was playing Monopoly with real houses, and planning to cash out before anyone realized they'd been tricked into building hotels on Baltic Avenue. I can't be seen fighting her, Kevin said, voice shaking, but I can get you copies of the board minutes, financial reports, internal emails, stuff that shows she's been pushing these changes behind closed doors. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just about me getting splashed at the pool anymore. This was about exposing an entire scheme. Sienna hadn't just called the police on the wrong guy. She had declared war on a man who had nothing better to do than make her life miserable. And a whole neighborhood ready to join the fight. As Kevin left the coffee shop, glancing over his shoulder like he expected Sienna to pop out of a potted plant, I sat back and grinned. Sienna Wren had built herself a kingdom, but she'd forgotten one important rule. When you build your empire on sand, all it takes is one good wave to wash it away. And buddy, I was bringing a tsunami. The HOA meeting wasn't just another boring suburban sideshow. It was the main event, and I was walking in like a man carrying dynamite. Kevin texted me the reminder. Observers allowed, Section 3, Paragraph 7. Just sit quietly, he said. Bless his heart for trying. I showed up early, my folder thick enough to kill a small bear, packed with contracts, maps, emails, and the kind of proof that turns polite smiles into legal meltdowns. The folding chairs were lined up like pews at a church service nobody wanted to attend, and the smell of burnt coffee floated through the air like a bad omen. Homeowners filed in with their small talk and neighborly nods, oblivious to the grenade about to roll under the table. Sienna spotted me and crossed the room like a shark smelling blood. "Mr. Thorne," she hissed, low and deadly. "This meeting is for Sunny Creek residents only." Before I could answer, Kevin popped up behind me like a guilty kid caught sneaking candy. "Actually," he stammered, "observers are allowed per the bylaws." He even quoted it like he was reciting scripture. Sienna's eyes narrowed so hard I thought her sunglasses might spontaneously combust, but she spun on her heel and stomped away because she couldn't throw me out without looking like a dictator with a clipboard. The meeting opened with standard HOA droning, repainting the tennis court, approving new shrubbery, basically the stuff that makes you want to fake a medical emergency. But when Sienna hit new business, the mood shifted. "We've had ongoing issues," she said, her voice sharpening to a razor's edge. "Unauthorized use of our facilities. The board proposes installing key card access and hiring security." Translation: she wanted to build a suburban fortress to keep me, and anyone like me, out. And the cherry on top? A $200, 0 cents, special assessment per household. The room buzzed with uneasy murmurs. An older man raised his hand. "What incidents are you talking about?" "I'm at the pool every morning. Never seen a problem." Sienna coughed into her hand like a bad actress stalling for time. "Recent incidents. Safety concerns, liability," she said vaguely, throwing out buzzwords like confetti. That was my cue. I stood up, folder in hand. Sienna tried to move on, tried to ignore me, but too many heads turned my way. Too many whispered, "Let him speak." Finally, she acknowledged me with the warmth of a parking ticket. I introduced myself calmly. "Kenyon Thorne, Lakeview Estates." I lifted my folder higher. "And I believe I'm the so-called incident you're talking about." The room went so still you could hear the stale coffee drip. I laid out the original property agreements, permanent pool access, signed, sealed, and reaffirmed by Sienna herself 3 years ago. I dropped copies onto the board table like slamming down aces in a poker game. "This is a binding covenant," I said, "and you all approved it." I didn't stop there. I pulled out the boundary maps, the original ones from the county versus the updated ones Sunny Creek had been quietly using. The shifts were obvious. Subtle little land grabs that pulled non-HOA homes into Sunny Creek's greedy grasp. I flipped open more evidence, financial statements showing that HOA funds weren't exactly being used democratically. $60,000 on landscaping upgrades, all on Sienna's street. Meanwhile, the community playground had a swing set held together with duct tape and prayers. Homeowners started shifting in their seats, murmuring louder now. "My property wasn't HOA when we bought it," someone whispered. "Why are we paying dues?" An elderly woman stood up, clutching one of my maps. "My backyard was never part of Sunny Creek," another shouted. "We demand a full audit." Sienna's face had gone from pastel pink to a furious shade of volcanic ash. She tried to regain control, blustering about legal consultations and complex boundary law. I cut in smoothly. "Speaking of legal matters," I said, holding up the final document, "maybe it's time we talked about the 10-year-old property fraud case involving a certain president trying to annex land that wasn't hers." Rowan Hale chose that moment to walk into the room like a cowboy entering a saloon. "That land was mine," he said loudly, "and I can confirm Sunny Creek's current maps are fraudulent The pool access agreement is real. It was a condition of me not pressing charges back then. The room exploded into actual shouting now. Homeowners clustered around the board table, waving my maps and contracts. We were lied to. You're making us pay for illegal changes. Where's the money going? Even some board members started backing away from Sienna like she had suddenly developed a contagious rash. Kevin. Brave, sweet Kevin stood up and cleared his throat. I've reviewed the records, he said. Everything Mr. Thorne presented checks out. It was over. Sienna's fortress of lies cracked, then crumbled completely. The $200 0-cent special assessment was immediately tabled indefinitely. Homeowners demanded an independent survey. A formal audit of HOA finances was proposed, and this time, nobody brushed it off. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, Kevin sidled up next to me, face pale but determined. You realize you just blew up the whole HOA, right? I grinned. Good. They had it coming. Because this wasn't the end, not even close. This was just the match hitting the fuse. And the real fireworks, the real reckoning for Sienna and her cronies, were about to light up the sky. The morning after the HOA meeting, I woke up to a text from Janet that simply said, "Check your email." Still groggy, I opened my inbox and nearly dropped my coffee. There it was, a bombshell sent to every single Sunny Creek resident. Subject line, "What you should know about your HOA funds." Attached were records, real, undeniable gut-punch records, showing 5 years' worth of shady spending by Sienna Wren. She wasn't just bad at boundaries. She wasn't just a suburban dictator with a pastel visor. She was siphoning HOA money to renovate her own house, to pay her brother-in-law's landscaping scam company, and to bankroll legal consultations, which just so happened to involve grabbing properties that didn't belong to Sunny Creek at all. I knew immediately who the whistleblower was. Kevin, sweet, trembling Kevin, who looked like he might faint at the last meeting, had grown a spine overnight and unleashed a warhead. Somewhere in his cozy little home office, I imagined him hyperventilating into a paper bag after hitting send. The neighborhood lost its collective mind. Phones rang nonstop. Group chats exploded. Angry neighbors marched to the community center demanding an emergency meeting, and for the first time in years, nobody was afraid of Sienna anymore. By the time the emergency session kicked off that evening, the room looked different, heavier, angrier. Sienna sat at the front like a dethroned queen, flanked by 2 shell-shocked board members who looked like they were about to plead the fifth. She tried to call the meeting to order, but someone shouted from the back, "We want answers, not excuses," and the dam broke. Homeowners took turns grilling her like it was a backyard barbecue and she was the main course. Why was $60,000 0 cents spent upgrading your street's landscaping, but my sidewalk's been crumbling for years? How come your brother-in-law's company got paid $15 0 cents for a consultation with no credentials? Why have the HOA maps mysteriously changed to include properties that never paid dues before? Sienna tried every trick in the Karen playbook. Denial, deflection, gaslighting. "This is a witch hunt," she cried. "These documents are stolen, taken out of context." She even had the audacity to glare at me like I was the villain here. But nobody was buying it. The anger in the room was palpable. Old, simmering resentment finally given oxygen. It didn't take long for a motion to suspend Sienna as HOA president to be introduced. And when the vote was called, it wasn't even close. She was booted faster than a kid cannonballing into the no-diving section. And yet, even cornered, Sienna couldn't help but make one last fatal mistake. In her desperate scramble, she slipped. "This is just like last time," she shouted, voice cracking. "I won't let you people take this from me again." The room froze. Janet leaned toward me and whispered, "Last time? Oh, Sienna, you beautiful disaster. You just handed me the match and the gasoline." After the meeting, I found Kevin pacing nervously near the creek trail behind the pool. He looked like a guy waiting to testify in front of Congress. "She knows it was me," he said, voice low. Not for sure, but she suspects. I clapped him on the shoulder. Good. Let her sweat. But Kevin wasn't done. He had something else to tell me. Something that would take this story from suburban soap opera straight into Netflix true crime territory. It's about your house, he said, and about the things Sienna's been trying to cover up for a decade. Apparently, Sienna's hatred wasn't just about pool chairs and access cards. 10 years ago, when she was still just a scheming resident instead of Queen of Sunny Creek, she tried to buy Rowan's house, the very one I now lived in. When Rowan refused her lowball offer, she didn't take no for an answer. She pulled off a scheme so shady it could give a palm tree nightmares. With help from a friendly county clerk, whose daughter just happened to be married into Sienna's family, she fast-tracked a fake property adjustment filing, a forged document that granted her a strip of Rowan's backyard, including access to the community pond, and boosting her property's value overnight. Except Rowan caught it. He saw the tax records, noticed the sudden shrinkage of his backyard, and blew the whistle before the ink even dried. The county yanked the fake adjustment, the clerk conveniently retired, and Sienna was slapped with a binding agreement. She had to officially recognize Rowan's land rights, including the special pool access covenant that traveled with the property forever. That's the paperwork she tried so hard to ignore. That's the history she tried to bury. That's the root of why my presence, my very existence, set her hair on fire. And now, thanks to her spectacularly dumb lawsuit threat, I had the perfect stage to expose every slimy piece of it, in a courtroom where she couldn't bully, bribe, or bluff her way out. Kevin slipped me one final gift before leaving that night: original minutes he had pulled from the HOA's cloud backups. They referenced the settlement, the pool access rights, and the boundary agreements, all documented and signed. Sienna had been erasing these records from current files, but not even Karen can delete cloud history when she doesn't know where to look. I spent the next day assembling everything into a legal artillery barrage: maps, contracts, boundary lines, county filings, police reports, and at the center of it all, Sienna's own signatures. Her fingerprints on every dirty deal. She had started this war with a phone call and a smug accusation at a swimming pool. Now she was about to drown in a tidal wave of her own making. Hero's empire was crumbling. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The real fireworks were about to start. And I was holding the match. 9 days after Sienna's meltdown, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my door. Inside was the official court summons: Sunny Creek Homeowners Association, VIS Canyon Thorn. The charges? Trespassing, property damage, unauthorized use of facilities. They even wanted a permanent injunction banning me from everything Sunny Creek. What they didn't realize was they had just kicked open the gates to their own personal Armageddon. Lyra, my real estate attorney and secret weapon, couldn't stop laughing when I showed her the paperwork. "Perfect," she said, grinning like a cat about to shred a canary. "Now we get to expose everything. Publicly. Under oath." We filed a brutal countersuit: harassment, defamation, wrongful fines, intentional misrepresentation, and for the grand finale, we included the old fraud attempt Sienna had tried so hard to erase from history. Her dirty laundry was about to be aired like an old mattress on trash day. On the morning of the hearing, the Sunny Creek courthouse looked like someone had sent out party invitations. Dozens of neighbors showed up, whispering and pointing. Half of them probably expected a slap fight. Instead, they were about to witness a demolition derby. Sienna arrived wearing a dark blazer and a smug smile, escorted by a lawyer who looked like he charged $1,000 0 cents per fake cough. She barely glanced at the crowd, probably figured her HOA crown still meant something. Spoiler, it didn't. Judge Eleanor Bradshaw called the room to order, her glasses perched low on her nose, her voice sharp enough to slice butter at 20 paces. Sienna's lawyer went first, spinning a fairy tale about poor, beleaguered Sunny Creek, terrorized by an unruly outsider who refused to follow the rules. He made me sound like I'd been doing cannonballs into the pool wearing a spiked leather jacket. When it was our turn, Lyra unloaded like a battleship. She didn't just defend me, she demolished them. She showed the original 2013 covenant granting my house full pool access. She presented police reports confirming that Sienna had ignored documented rights and repeatedly called 911 on legal activity. She even entered into evidence Kevin's saved meeting minutes showing Sienna's attempts to alter maps and records. And then she dropped the bomb, the decade-old property fraud. Photos of documents, county investigation records, handwriting analyses, Sienna's name stitched through every corner like a spider, weaving a sticky web of fraud. Judge Bradshaw leaned back in her chair, steepled her fingers, and stared at Sienna like a snake sizing up lunch. Ms. Wren, would you care to respond to the evidence suggesting you attempted to fraudulently acquire property through falsified documents? Sienna opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her lawyer, who looked like he wanted to evaporate, and then stammered something about ancient misunderstandings and complex clerical errors. Judge Bradshaw didn't even blink. Ms. Wren, I am dismissing the HOA's claims in full. Mr. Thorne's rights are legally binding, and the harassment he suffered is unacceptable. Furthermore, I am referring the fraudulent documentation to the district attorney's office for potential criminal investigation. The gavel came down like thunder, the room exploded into whispers. And just like that, the Queen was deposed. As we exited the courtroom, homeowners shook my hand, clapped me on the back, some even apologized for not speaking up sooner. The same people who used to side-eye me at the pool were now treating me like a local folk hero. Meanwhile, across the street, Sienna stood alone under the courthouse's battered oak tree, clutching her now worthless summons in a trembling fist. No supporters, no friends, no power. Just a woman finally forced to stand in the ruins she created. But it wasn't just about winning. The next month brought real change. An envelope arrived in my mailbox, Sunny Creek HOA's logo stamped across the top. Inside was a formal apology letter signed by the new board, with Kevin Vale's name at the top as interim president. They acknowledged my pool access rights, invited me to join a new neighborhood relations committee, and promised full transparency going forward. Kevin and I met for coffee a few days later. His transformation was staggering. No more nervous glances, no more half apologies. He was confident, determined. We dug through everything, he said. Sienna misused thousands in HOA funds. We've put in new safeguards, transparent budgeting, annual audits, term limits for board members. She can never do this to anyone again. He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a permanent pool access card with my name etched in gold. And, Kevin added, grinning sheepishly, there's going to be a little plaque by the pool. Just a reminder that it belongs to the community. All of it, not just the loudest voice. 2 weeks later, I hosted a backyard barbecue. People from both Lakeview Estates and Sunny Creek showed up, laughing, sharing food, telling stories. Families that hadn't spoken in years were making plans for block parties. Kids darted between yards with popsicles and water guns. Even Officer Asher stopped by, sipping lemonade and shaking his head in amazement. In 15 years on the force, he said, chuckling, this is the most satisfying HOA takedown I've ever seen. Sometimes I thought, it doesn't take an army to change a community, it just takes one person refusing to bow. Later that night, I floated in the community pool, staring up at the stars. Somewhere beyond those stars, Karen Sienna Wren was probably plotting her next empire. But here, in this place, she was just another ghost of suburban tyranny, finally laid to rest. I thought about the people who said, you can't fight the system. I thought about the homeowners too scared to speak up. And I thought about all the Karens who still believed that a little power, a little paperwork, and a loud enough voice could control people forever. They were wrong, because boundaries aren't drawn by red lines on maps. They're drawn by the people willing to stand up and say, no more. If you've ever been told you didn't belong, if you've ever been bullied out of your own backyard, if you've ever watched a Karen try to rewrite reality, know this. One voice is enough. One person standing their ground can shake an empire until it crumbles into dust. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from. And if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts.